Good morning. In just about a week, my wife and I are going to be celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary, and I'm very excited about that. God has so blessed me with her. And I've been thinking about our wedding, of course, as most people would, and I loved our wedding. It was beautiful. It was incredible. But you know what? There was something that was not quite right, and almost nobody knows that. And that is that when it came to the liturgy of the word, the priest read the wrong gospel. He chose to read the reading of the first and greatest commandment, which is love God and love neighbor, which is okay. It's great. It's beautiful, and my wife is my neighbor, and I should love her. And in so doing, I do love God. That's clear. But you know what? We chose the wedding at Cana, and as I've been reflecting on it over the last several weeks, and actually even earlier than that, I've come to realize what the wedding at Cana has taught me about marriage and how much that particular gospel speaks to me and to my wife about what marriage is. And so, just as a refresher, the wedding at Cana is the story of Jesus' first miracle, where he turns the water into wine. And if we were to stop there, it wouldn't sound like it's all that significant. But here's the story, right? Jesus, Mary, and Jesus' disciples all go to this wedding. And we don't even know who got married. We just know that there's a couple that got married. And in that day and time, their wedding receptions weren't like ours. Ours are, planned and they're catered, and it's on the caterer to make sure that things happen. But back then, it was on the people who were getting married, and if anything went wrong, the scandal fell to them. And it lasted for days. Now, what happens in this case is they run out of wine, and people start murmuring, and Mary gets word of it, and she goes to her son and says, "Hey, they're out of wine." And Jesus looks at his mother and says, yeah, so how is that my problem? And Mary knows that Jesus is going to do something about it. Why? Because he's a good son. And so Mary turns to the waiter and says, "Do whatever he tells you to do." And Jesus says, "You see those clay jars over there full of water? I want you to go and dip your serving ladle into those jars and put them into the serving canisters, and then serve it to the guests. Don't tell anybody where it came from." Okay. So they do that. And a little while later, people start saying, "Hey, what happened here? They actually gave us the better wine now." And people were perplexed. And so the question came, well, why would you give the good wine now? Most people start with the good wine, and then when people are happy, when people have perhaps had a little more to drink than they ought, then you serve the cheap stuff because nobody's going to know the difference. And that's kind of where the gospel ends. And that's where my understanding begins. Why? Because the gospel reading is not about the wedding. It's about marriage. Well, okay, well, what do you mean? Here's the deal, right? So when my wife and I first started dating, I was real I was really happy. Why? Because this beautiful, brown-haired, brown-eyed, beautiful, great smile woman wanted to be with me and wanted to spend time with me. And you know what? I kind of sort of got a little buzz off of that, honestly. I did. I was high as a kite, happy, right? And the more time I spent with her, the happier I got. And the more time I spent with her, the happier she got. Um, Kind of like, I don't know, cheap wine. And then we got married. And then life happened. And somewhere in all of that, sometimes we can lose a little bit of focus. And even that cheap wine can lose its potency. Even that that initial burst of love can somehow become ordinary, like water. But if we pay attention to our marriage, and if we work on it, and if we keep God in the middle, like my wife and I learned to do, um, and we're still learning to do, God will take that water in the clay jars and draw it out and provide the richest, sweetest, strongest wine. When we first got married, I remember in November, of that year, which was the following month, my wife said to me this. She said, I hope I love you as much in 25 years as I do today. And I looked at her and I said, I hope not. And she was a little upset with me. And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, I hope that it's richer and sweeter and stronger. I hadn't even connected it to the reading of the gospel, but today, as I think about where we are and who we are in our marriage, I know that we've actually lived out the wedding at Cana. And so I'm going to ask that you would pray for us, that we would continue down that road. I would ask that you would pray for all married couples, especially for those whose wine has turned to water, that Jesus would act in their lives and turn the water back into wine, but a richer, sweeter, stronger one. And let's also pray for those who are preparing for marriage, that they would open their eyes, their hearts, and their minds to the possibility of great growth in love as they continue their married life. Thanks, and have a good day.